of the garment worker, a statue by Judith Weller, and a longtime symbol for workers' rights in this Union town. Wearing a yarmulke and hunched over a hand-operated sewing machine, this figure is modeled after Judith Weller's father, a Jewish immigrant machine operator in New York City's garment industry. The sculpture commemorates Jewish garment workers at the turn of the century, the backbone of Jewish life in New York City. And now in 2025, workers remain the backbone of New York City. Unfortunately, at the national level, workers' rights are under a grave assault. We have a president who ran on the idea that there would be support for working people against the high cost of living, but that was a con. This is a president who has spent the first months of his second term attacking the National Labor Relations Board, seeking to prevent it from doing its business at all, looking to undermine their efforts to prevent captive audience meetings and protect workers' rights to join a union. This is a president who is unleashing an unprecedented assault on the federal workforce, whether that's the Department of Education, which is being destroyed right before our eyes, or whether that's the VA. I mean, my sister-in-law is a psychiatric nurse practitioner at a VA hospital where the unit has had people fired and laid off without cause or notice, diminishing the ability of veterans with trauma as well as the workers who serve them to do their jobs. And this is a president who is rolling back historic civil rights protections that protect workers. But in New York City, we must not let it stand. That's why earlier this morning, the Comptroller's Office organized our third workers' rights convening, Workers Fight Back. And we were pleased to have as our keynote speaker, Jennifer Abruzzo, the Trump-fired general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board, who is the one who pushed forward on preventing captive audience meetings and giving workers a real opportunity to organize and bargain collectively. And one thing that we celebrated at that workers' rights convening is that in my tenure as controller, we have now recovered over $9 million that workers were stolen from New York City workers through the prevailing wage law. And I'm so proud of the Comptroller's Workers' Rights Bureau and the work that they have done to recover that money. I want to tell you about the biggest remaining settlement that we have. So I just told you we've got over $9 million. We're now working to settle a $2.5 million case because during the pandemic, Andrew Cuomo forced the MTA to hire COVID subway cleaners and went for low-road contractors who hired immigrant workers with no health insurance. And then to make it even worse, violated New York's prevailing wage laws. Subway cleaners get a prevailing wage. But no, Andrew Cuomo says we're going to force them to do his COVID hygiene theater, to clean the subway benches and poles within an inch of their life while COVID is circulating. And what does he do? Stiffs those workers out of $2.5 million. That's like classic Andrew Cuomo. Try to look good out in front while screwing working people in the back. New Yorkers aren't having it. This is actually a pattern we've seen over and over again. Andrew Cuomo opposed raising the minimum wage and providing paid family leave until the fight for 15 became too powerful for him to hide from. He sided with Uber and Lyft over drivers and deliveristas like the ones represented here, while New York City was fighting for Uber and Lyft drivers and deliveristas. I led legislation to make us the first place in the country to give Uber and Lyft drivers and deliveristas a living wage, with the great support of our deliveristas from Workers' Justice Project and James Parrott, who led the study showing that it was what made sense to do. Andrew Cuomo was standing with Uber and Lyft and not with working people. And let's not forget Tier 6. When Andrew Cuomo ran for governor in 2010, he said, and I quote, that he was going to war with the unions, and I'll tell you, that's one of the few promises he actually kept. New York is not going to stand for leaders who refuse to stand with working people. What is essential right now is for New York City, for the next mayor, to make government work for working people. And that's why I'm pleased today to be the first mayoral candidate to issue a comprehensive plan to support and lift up and protect and fight for New York's working families. This is the first workers' rights platform in the 2025 mayoral campaign, and James tells me it may be the first workers' rights platform any New York City mayoral candidate has issued. And there's a lot in it to make sure that we use all the tools the city has to help support and lift up New York's working people. On day one of my mayoralty, I will create the New York City Mayor's Office of Workers' Rights to bring together all the tools that the city has to protect and promote the rights of working New Yorkers. So when decisions are getting made about contracting and procurement, about franchising and concessions, about economic development, about land use, about budgeting, about legislation, the Mayor's Office of Workers' Rights will be thinking, how do we advance working people, make sure they're paid a fair wage, make sure they work in safe working conditions, make sure they've got the right to collectively organize and bargain and form a union. And that's what the Mayor's Office of Workers' Rights will do, is bring all our tools together so that our city has the nation's strongest labor, civil rights, and immigrant worker protections we can possibly have. The plan also includes that I will fight to raise the city's minimum wage to be in line with the city's high cost of living, as I've been doing alongside Raise Up New York since 2019. I will expand New York City's paid sick leave law to include an additional 5 days so that workers can be able to meet the needs they have for their health and their family's health, as Chicago did last year. One of the most important elements of this plan builds on work that I did when I was in the city council. So working with the set of folks here. Hello, Naipan. It's great to have you as well. When I was in the city council, the group of people here and I and a bunch of workers' organizations, labor unions, teamed up to pass a slew of legislation that has lifted up working people. We heard fast food workers had erratic schedules, so we passed the Fair Workweek law that made New York City first big city in the country to give 2 weeks advance notice and stable schedules and a pathway to full-time jobs for fast food workers. We learned that freelancers were getting stiffed out of money they'd earned, so we passed the Freelancers and Free Act to prevent wage theft against freelancers. Thousands of freelancers have recovered millions of dollars from that. And then probably most significantly are those gig worker minimum pay laws, because Uber and Lyft drivers and deliveristas will be paying sub-minimum wage of $5 and $6 an hour after expenses. And Uber and Lyft and Seamless and DoorDash fought hard against us, but we passed laws that made this the first city in the country to guarantee minimum pay for Uber and Lyft drivers and deliveristas, and now there's billions of dollars in the pockets of literally tens of thousands of workers instead of in Uber and Lyft and Seamless's bank accounts. And then the last law that I want to talk about was to protect fast food workers from being fired for no reason at all. We made those jobs, instead of at-will employment, we made them just cause protected so that they could only be fired for a good reason. When I'm mayor, I will protect New Yorkers against unfair firings by passing the Secure Jobs Act. That means workers can't be fired for no reason at all, and employers got to have a reason to fire a worker. That is going to be extra important with Donald Trump's National Labor Relations Board failing to stand up and make sure workers have the rights to organize. That's a big part of our effort to make sure that in New York City, workers' rights to organize and form a union and collectively bargain will be protected. How about that? Yeah. All right. I'll fight back against the Trump administration's rollback of civil rights and their attacks on DEI. and I'll protect immigrant New Yorkers who are facing Trump administration attacks, including by strengthening those protections of our app-based workers. And finally, to combat a lack of accountability of harassers in the workplace, as we've seen in the attempted comebacks of serial harassers like Donald Trump and Andrew Cuomo, I will strengthen protections against sexual harassment and discrimination and against pay inequality so that working people in New York do not have to endure serial sexual harassment, not from their government leaders, not from their employers, not from anybody else. And that's just a taste of the great policies that are in this workers' rights platform that'll make it possible for us to strengthen worker protections in New York City. I want to thank the people who were instrumental in helping develop this plan. Paul San, labor rights activist and longtime friend. Thank you, Paul. James Parrott, economist and researcher who was central to that gig worker work and so much more. Ligia Gualpa and Gustavo Ache and members of, and who are here in their own capacity. Excuse me, thank you. And George and Maria from NYPAN, New York Progressive Action Network, which I can say because they have endorsed me in this race, so thank you guys, and thanks to NYPAN. Look, this statue celebrates working New Yorkers because working New Yorkers are the ones who make this city run. And when we say New York is a union town, what we mean is that this city has the backs of working people. And this is an urgent time to make it true. That's why when I'm mayor, and we will create that mayor's office of workers' rights, we will fight for minimum wage increases, we'll pass the Secure Jobs Act, we will make this a place where the city is working just as hard for working New Yorkers as working people are working for this city. Thanks very much for being here. Thank you for supporting workers, and I will be happy to take your questions.
And how are you going to fight corporate America with the cause and them destroying the labor force? What are you going to do?
Sorry, say the question again.
How are you going to fight corporate America when it comes to, advocating for us to work?
Yeah, I mean, let me give you a few examples. I mean, I mentioned the fight we've taken to Uber and Lyft to make sure that for-hire drivers got paid a living wage, or the fight we took to Grubhub and Seamless and DoorDash to make sure our deliveristas are paid a living wage. They fought back hard, they went to court, they tried to undermine the law at City Hall. I was unwavering, the workers were unwavering, and that's what we're gonna do right now. We're busy in the controller's office standing up because the workers who are have invested their retirement security at Tesla have the right to have those funds protected, and we've been leading the effort to call out Elon Musk's failures at Tesla, just like we led the fight when Elon Musk tried to steal $80 million from the people of New York City, and I'll keep doing that every step of the way.
What laws will the city pass? We're talking on the federal
Yeah.
government.
Well, the Secure Jobs Act is probably the best example here. So right now, most people in America are what are called at-will employees, which means your employer can fire you for no reason at all. They don't even need to give a reason. They can just fire you. It's not like that in Europe. It's not like that in Canada. Most places are not at-will employment. It's what's called good cause or just cause employment. You can only be fired for a good reason, not because you didn't smile at your boss or not because you started to organize a union. We're going to pass that law in New York City, the Secure Jobs Act, so that you can't be fired on a whim. We did it for fast food workers. When I'm mayor, we'll do it for all workers in New York City.
Hey Brad, just one quick question. You talked about your record regarding workers and Cuomo's record regarding workers. But in the last couple of weeks, the former governor's picked up a couple of different endorsements, electrical workers, painters, carpenters. Is it frustrating, given what you've said about your record, is it frustrating those unions aren't endorsing you instead?
Look, I think, as I've said many times, that as New Yorkers remember the track record, they are not going to replace one corrupt chaos agent with another. There's just so many examples of places where Andrew Cuomo tried to look like he was helping workers while he was screwing them. So he'll claim credit for raising the minimum wage, and yet he fought against raising the minimum wage until it was impossible for him to do so. And I mean, those subway cleaners, I don't think most New Yorkers know, maybe most union members don't know, that here's a mayor who, in the name of his looking good during the pandemic, was willing to screw immigrant workers, not just by not giving them health care, but by going against the prevailing wage law and cheating them out of $2.5 million. And I believe that as people remember that history or to learn the history that they didn't know, they're going to say, that's not a mayor who will work for working people. That's a mayor who would just be in it for himself. The point of my plan today is to make clear as mayor, I will be in it for working people. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you all.